everybody, we're just back. We're here to get started. Today we have a new visitor with us. Her name is Kaneen, and she is actually from a facility in Wyoming, from an assisted living facility. So why don't you go ahead and introduce yourself a little bit.
So my name is Kaneen, and I've been running communities for about 15 years now. The community I work at right now has assisted living and memory care, and it's truly a passion just of mine to work with the elderly.
So tell me a little bit about how many beds is your facility and how does it break down?
So we're licensed for 62 beds. We have 44 apartments on the assisted living and 13 apartments over on the memory care unit. And smaller building, so a lot more intimate. It feels more like a family than some of the bigger buildings that I've run. So it's much cozier.
So tell everybody too, what is the difference between the regular assisted living and the memory care part? So what are the differences when people are looking into a facility? What is it that memory care offers?
So memory care is kind of that next level above of people that are struggling with some type of dementia or cognitive impairment. And those are the people that, really need to be in a unit that's small, staffed higher, and really is secure so that there's no chance of going outside and going home or trying to find their vehicle, so that really they're much safer. In their mind, they're living minute to minute, and I'm never quite sure which age level they're at the time, but that way we know that they're safe.
So how in those units do they offer activities? Are there things for them to do in the unit, or are they just kind of where we pictured the old-timey nursing homes and stuff where people were just kind of stuck in a hallway and didn't have much to do?
Right. So I remember in high school walking down a nursing home, and everybody was sitting in their wheelchair, and there was this one lady that was screaming help over and over and over, and it was traumatizing, which is probably why I struggle a little bit at the nursing homes now. But really, there's planned activities, there's impromptu activities, a lot of physical things like bopping the balloon around. We have little stations of activities that they can really do independently without a staff member facilitating it. There is a lot of TV that they watch, and I think sometimes they just get tired, and that's the way, everybody's always relaxed, is to watch a little bit of TV. But they're not just trapped in this memory care unit. They can go out into the assisted living and listen to the band that's playing, or they can get on the bus and go to the museum. So really their life is pretty wonderful. They just have a lot of us to help them.
So in the assisted living, are there levels of care that you guys offer? So people could sign up for instance, getting their meds given to them, or is it just literally a room and meals provided, or how does that work?
Yeah, so in the memory care unit, we just assume that everybody is going to need the medication administration and help in the shower, help getting dressed. So it's just one flat fee, because we're really there to help them with anything they need. We want them to be as independent as possible, so we'll encourage them so that they don't lose the skills that they still have. But one fee covers everything from meals, housekeeping, activities, all the nursing services. So there's never a surprise hidden fee.
And then what about out of the memory care and the assisted living side?
So the assisted living side does have the levels of care, and that's so that we can customize how much care, what services they need, so that other people aren't necessarily subsidizing people that need a lot more assistance than maybe somebody else in the building. So everything's customized on the assisted living.
So, and I think that's one of the things that people don't always understand when they're starting to look into nursing homes or assisted living, is how they work with payers, how much it costs. And one of the things we've been talking about on one of the other podcast things that we did was talking about planning for your future, for that retirement, that some levels of care like assisted livings can be expensive, and to be able to save and have the money for that, what that looks like, and starting to plan ahead. Tell us a little bit about how, when you go and you evaluate somebody who's wanting to come into the assisted living, do you sit down with the family and kind of talk to them about, this is the price for this, or how all that looks and works?
We do. In fact, I'll spend a lot of time just even observing and talking to the potential resident. I'll interview the family, and then I can go through and determine, about how much nursing services they're going to need, and then give them a price of what they would be looking at monthly. Our building is private pay, so we don't take any kind of Medicaid or Medicare.
Long-term, if they have long-term care insurance though, will that help?
Yes, definitely. I'll bill it for them, I'll help them qualify, and that, for a lot of people, that is the way that they can have that lifestyle that they want at that age when they need that little bit of help.
And then if they come in at one level, what happens if they start deteriorating? How does that?
So we reassess everybody, whether there's a change of condition annually, if there's a change in their services. So we have the ability to take somebody that doesn't need any assistance at all the way up to what we would call a level 6, where they do need help in the shower and getting dressed and maybe getting to meals and those kinds of things. So we have a pretty good range of what we can have in our building.
But let's say they start out at, come in at one level and it's one price, and then they progress to the other. Is that just kind of a conversation you guys keep having with the families of, your mom or dad or aunt or whoever it is declining, and we think they need more services, and this is going to be the price change? And
Yeah, so we really do that through kind of the family care conferences, and having lived with family members with dementia, you never want to have that surprise of, hey, by the way, your mom's dementia's progressed and it's going to be $1,000 more a month. So I always keep the families in the loop, even if it's a smaller incident that happened, not to be the person that, I feel like sometimes I always give them bad news, so I call with good news too, but I never want a family member to be caught off guard that their loved one is changing.
So, and how did COVID affect you guys and how you were kind of doing business, or how visitors could come or not come? What did that look like for y'all in the assisted living?
So COVID for us was probably, like everybody else, the longest year in history. We had to isolate. There were no visitors, no family members could come in. We really tried to do things like FaceTime and Zoom, but when you're older, your vision's not as good. If you have dementia, it doesn't make sense to be looking at some kind of device. Yeah. And what I found was that when we had to isolate everybody from their friends and family, and when we did have some cases of COVID, I think the isolation was by far worse than COVID itself for us.
Are y'all back open now where people can?
We are. We take our precautions, all of our cleaning, we've got masks, everybody's had their vaccinations, so we're hoping that life is going to be a lot easier now.
So one of the things I know that you guys do that's really neat, y'all have a really creative activities person who's always coming up with cool things for the residents to do and stuff. So what is one of your favorite activities that y'all do for the residents?
So we have this life-sized game that we play where it's a horse race, and all of the staff dresses up. I mean, I've been in a dinosaur costume, any kind of funny Halloween costumes that we can find. So we're all in our costumes, and we have giant pairs of dice that the residents roll, and that's how many steps we get to move. And of course, my life enrichment director always pushes me outside of my comfort zone. So in between all of this, there's a dance off. So she'll put the music on and we all have to dance, and then we go back to the game, and the residents win prizes. And
so they kind of bet on y'all or something on who's gonna win?
Yes, they do. In fact, they have a little sheet that they have to fill out. So
awesome.
I never win.
You never win.
But that's okay.
So what happens, do you guys ever have happy hours or things like that? Because you hear about sometimes that facilities will have happy hour. They allow them to drink a little bit of wine or beer or something like that.
We do, and I think that's part of, that's part of the culture and their lifestyle that they've had in the past. So they do a happy hour at least once a week, and it gives them that chance to socialize and to maybe feel a little bit more normalcy. Kind of like when they were at home and they got to sip on whatever their favorite beverage was. So they get to do that here and socialize with their friends.
Do you see a lot of kind of, when people move in, Are they other residents pretty welcoming, and that they really try and form a little family there? Or
They are, and we really work hard to try to partner. If we had two ranchers that a new rancher moves in, we'll try to connect them so that they can kind of share their stories, and really just have that almost an ambassador program so that the resident doesn't feel like they're having their first day of elementary school and you don't know where to sit at the lunch table.
right, I know some facilities, we've seen this before at some of our nursing homes, where especially you have long-term care residents that have been there for years, they tend to form almost like little cliques, and when new people come in, they're like, you can't sit there, that's my spot, so everybody has like habitually where they go, where
Yes.
they sit, and so any new person just kind of throws the whole thing into chaos, and so it's
It
kind of
does. There's no assigned seating, but yes, everybody sits in the exact same place.
So do you guys do just formal sit down dinners, or do you allow them options to come and like get snacks whenever they want, or how does that?
So there's always snacks. We don't want anybody to be hungry. And they have their 3 meals a day. If there's some kind of social during the day, there's always treats. And in the afternoon, we send around a water cart with some snacks, and just to make sure everybody stays hydrated and,
And what can they
hungry.
do? Like describe what the apartments look like.
So assisted living apartments, they're built so that you don't have to cook. So there's not a full kitchen. You have your microwave and a little refrigerator, but it's simple because we don't want it to be overwhelming, like having a household and the house that you have to take care of and clean. So they're smaller apartments, and we have the housekeepers come in once a week. We just take care of everything so that the whole goal is that the resident can go experience life and have fun and not have to worry about taking care of a home anymore.
Right. Most of them that I've seen though have sort of the little living room set up, and then a bedroom off of that, and then their own bathroom that they have.
Yes.
That they have. And then, do you have any couples? Like, if couples wanted to come there, do you have couples that reside together or anything, or have you ever?
We do, yeah. So we're one of the only buildings in Casper that actually has 2-bedroom apartments for couples. And right now I think we have 3 couples living with us. We have 4 2-bedroom apartments. And I think it's nice to have their spouse there and have all the support that we can offer to keep them safe.
And what happens? Have you ever had an instance where one spouse is in the memory care and one spouse is out, or?
We've been able to manage that so that we can keep them together, whether it's through a third-party kind of extra provider or maybe a higher level of care, because ultimately we want them to stay together. When it does reach the point that they can't, that is definitely an option, is to move somebody to memory care and the other person stay on assisted living, but they can still, see each other.
See each other and come out, or one go in, the other.
Yeah.
I think that's really important, that people understand that just because you come in at one level doesn't mean you can't progress sort of to another if that's something that's really needed. And I think sometimes that's where you see a lot of times struggling. It's been my experience in the past that if you have a couple where one especially has dementia, maybe one doesn't have dementia, but they're just kind of physically impaired a little bit, but they've been spending so much time caring for this dementia person. And you guys know a lot of times the dementia patients are up at night, so you aren't sleeping well if you're taking care of them. You're always monitoring them to make sure they aren't leaving or being unsafe or leaving, stoves on or things like that. And so I've seen a lot of times where the dementia person actually outlives the care provider, because the care provider gets so physically tasked with trying to take care of their spouse that it just physically causes them to decline. They just can't keep up with the needs of that person.
And then they don't take care of themselves. I think the statistic is 67% of caregivers pass away before the one they're caring for.
Yeah, it's super often. And I think, a lot of times people are afraid to go into an assisted living because they feel like they're giving up some of their freedom. But I've seen a lot of couples do really well when they have that extra support there for that one that really needs it more.
Right. And I think the generation that we're working with now really pictures something more like a nursing home instead of what assisted living looks like. And the best way I can describe it is that, sometimes it feels kind of like a swanky hotel. It's beautiful, it's clean, it's comfortable, and we don't take any rights away. If they're still driving and they want to go shopping, they can do what they want.
And what about pets?
Oh, definitely pets. Yes. I think that bond with a pet is really what can keep people going. So we've got cats and dogs. We had a Saint Bernard at one point, which I loved. But I think that gives somebody purpose and it keeps them moving. And we've got these areas for the dogs to run, or a courtyard where the resident can sit and their dog can play with the other dogs. And I think, that just does the heart good.
Yeah, I think all the dogs I've seen there, though, I don't think I've seen one that's not overweight. I think they get fed a lot by like a lot of people. And dementia people themselves like keep feeding them because they forget they fed them. And so I've seen that one lab is pretty big. So.
Yeah, I see a lot of leftovers get tucked into a napkin and carried away.
the dog. I think there was one person, didn't their son or somebody come get the dog because he was struggling a little bit, he was pretty hefty.
Yes, definitely.
So, but I think that's something too. I think a lot of people fear if they leave their house, they're going to lose their animals, or they're going to lose their car, or they're going to lose certain freedoms. I think that's really important to talk about, that there are ways for them to still get the help they need or support, but then be able to still do some of the things that they want to do.
Right. And the thing I hear the most is, I don't want to leave my home that I've lived in for 60 years. But really there comes a point where it's just not safe. And so there's a little bit of a transition period. But I can tell you that once people move in and they've acclimated, they don't want to go back home. And then if they need a surgery and they go to the hospital and then they come back, it's like, I'm so glad to be back here. This is my home. So you can give up a home and move and get help and still actually feel like you have a home and want to go back to it.
Well, and I think it's nice because in assisted living, you have your own space. So you aren't sharing a space with somebody like in a nursing home where you're just sharing a room. You have that living room. You can be away, segregated, get away. But you also have the opportunity to really socialize and mingle with a lot of people in a smaller space that you get to know.
Yes, so the ones that are more reserved and don't want to be social, they're happy staying in their apartments, even though we encourage them to try to come out a little bit. But then I hear from the other side that there's so many activities that we're keeping them too busy, and I think that's the best compliment we can get.
Yeah, just lots to choose from. And they have the right to choose to come or not come or whatever with the activities. What would you say has been one of the most positive things that you've seen while being at the facility?
I think that's definitely when somebody moves in that has lived at home alone for 10, 20 years, they've lost weight because they're not eating properly, their memory's not working as well. We get them into our building and the memory perks up and they put on weight and they're not depressed anymore. And all of a sudden, cognitively, they're doing much better. So making a difference in somebody's health is by far the best part of the job.
Great. And the other thing is, so they are big pranksters over there, so they like to play jokes on each other. So what do you think's been the best prank that's been played on your staff?
Well, so we have this Cupid doll that I'm sure is an antique, but it looks like this really scary, mean
I've seen it
Chucky doll.
Yes.
And so I think for me, one of the funniest things that I saw, I walked into our big walk-in freezer in the kitchen and here's Chucky standing there with a pair of scissors. So yeah, before I left town, I put a mouse out, just a fake mouse, and I don't know who has my mouse or my fake other stuff. So hopefully I'll get it back eventually.
There's probably a pet, like I said, that found it, and like some cat's like carrying it around thinking it's a toy. So.
Yep.
Okay, anything else you want to add or give anybody any parting words of wisdom if they're looking at an AL for their loved one?
The one thing that I see is that nobody wants to put their loved one in a home, but it's not a home. It's a lifestyle that truly is a blessing, and people need to make that change sooner rather than later, especially if there's a cognitive impairment, because it's easier to build a routine and get into some habits while you still can make some of those memories and make friends. So when they wait too long, it just makes the transition harder. It's harder on that resident. So I would just say, come join a building that's fun and don't wait too long.
And maybe start looking even before you think you're going to need it, so you have an idea of what's available. And that's one of the things that I talk to patients about a lot, is a lot of times nobody has any idea what's out there until their loved one winds up in the hospital, and then it's a sudden wake up call that something has to be done. And now you have a hospital case manager trying to make a decision for you, and you don't really know anything yourself. So I'm always like, go just look around, see what's out there, try to make plans, communicate with your family of places you might want to go. And then the other thing is, like I said earlier, just getting with retirement financial planners just to look at, because there are ways to, I think a lot of times people are, the other thing I've seen is not just want to give up their freedom and concerns about that, about going into a facility. It's also about, I want to be able to leave something for my kids, like this generation. That's a huge thing. And so I have my house I worked really hard for, and I have my car, and I have a little bit of savings, and they're scared that they're gonna have to sell their house and you know, deplete everything, and they'd rather stay in their house and be able to like leave that for their kids. And I think just getting with a financial planner, because there's several things that you can do. There are trusts that you can set up and other things that can protect some of the assets that you've worked hard to build, but you have to be able to do that. I think it's 5 years ahead of before you go in. I think they look back 5 years at your financials or something, don't they?
5 or 7, I can never remember which.
And that's more related to like the nursing homes, if you're going to get Medicare, Medicaid to pitch in. But I think planning so that maybe you've invested in the stock market and it's producing funds that are going to be able to continue to pay for you, and then assisted living or something is really important. And you can't, when you're 80, you can't look at doing that at 80. It's something you need to be looking at, you know, when you're in your 40s and 50s, and looking into long-term insurance and looking into investment opportunities that could produce something that can sustain you later down the road when you might need more care.
Right, because chances are you're going to need some kind of assistance at some point.
Well, we're all living longer, and we aren't really in a society, in today's society. I can even remember my grandparents took care of their parents, or my great grandparents were taken care of. But I think in today's society, most families, mom and dad are working, so if the grandparents get sick, they really can't afford to stop work to move them in and take care of them. And so culturally, I just don't think we're set up where we are used to just taking care. And then when you add dementia on top of it, if you're trying to work and take care of a dementia patient all night, that's just, it's very, very tough.
Very overwhelming, and that's where you get your caregiver burnout.
Yeah. And so that's why I think people just need to start planning that, looking and supposing that might happen. If it doesn't, great. But if it does, then you kind of have your ducks in a row for all that.
I mean, people have insurance for the unknown, and that's what they need to plan for.
Yeah, definitely. So anyway, thank you everybody for tuning in today. That was just a little bit about assisted living information, and just we'll be talking some more about that and what the differences are between that and actually nursing homes, and some more on the financial planning portions of those. So hope everybody's doing well. Thanks.